Okay, it's Sunday, which means against my better judgment, it's time to go to Reddit and see what questions we can dredge up from the hive of scum and villainy. So, bad tanks lose games more often than DPS I often encounter. Yes, I often find that DPS are almost never actually the reason that a game is being lost. Sometimes they are, but it is almost always the tanks or healers that are actually the problem. But people have a very straightforward understanding of why they're losing. Well, our team are dead, and their team is still alive. So obviously our team isn't doing enough damage to the enemy team to kill them, which is obviously the DPS's fault, says the Reinhardt who's in the enemy team's spawn while your team is getting dove by the entire enemy team. But fucking Reinhardt, he got one swing into everybody, so he's got gold damage now, and he's like, yo, Soldier, what the fuck? Well, maybe, if Soldier had a tank, you know. Or there's the Zenyatta in front of you, just like firing into the enemy team, doesn't even have an Harmony Orb up anywhere, only uses Transcendence to save his own life, doesn't care about anybody else, you know? It's almost never the DPS, but people have a very straightforward way of looking at things like that. How do I dive Widow as Genji? I know this sounds like a stupid, or no, his sounds like a stupid question, but hear me out. Because my only options of getting close to her, my best effective range was kind of garbage. One, I dive straight at her in open sight lines with deflect up and dash towards her. I can't do this because if I don't one-shot her, which I most likely won't because she has escape, I'm screwed with no escape abilities and I die. Also, if I try without using my escape, I will get headshotted or body-shotted and I'll be dead or half HP when I try to escape. I move around the map and use coverage because I can. This will escape, but it takes me nearly half a minute. That's a long-ass time. Like, you are going a really obtuse way if it's taking you that long to get somewhere. Every time there's more team finding me, and when I get close to her, she'll have grapple off cooldown, and she's gone. Well, you see, that's the thing, is that because you've gone around and didn't need to use dash to get to her, when she grapples away, you dash after her. And then both of your cooldowns are, like, you've used dash, she's used grapple, she can't get away from you anymore, and then you kill the Widowmaker. Which is, you know, well, just kill the Widowmaker and it's no issue, yeah, but, like, the idea is, you didn't need to use your gap closer to get to her, so when she uses her escape, you follow her with your gap closer. I dive with Winston or D.Va, and Winston and D.Va have both loud audio cues, so it doesn't matter how, she'll always hear us coming a mile away. Like, I have to wonder how, like, what paths you take to get to people, if it takes you, like, half a minute to get to the Widowmaker. 'Cause, like, what map would you have to go through such an obtuse path to get to her? Because I'm struggling to even think about places where it would take Genji, like, half a minute to get around the map. Like, even, like, the most out-of-the-way locations I can think of would probably only really take, like, 10-15 seconds to navigate round. And, like, there's, like, basically no chance of really being discovered if you take an obtuse path around. Because I'm thinking about, like, Dorado's second checkpoint, or the first checkpoint even, like, yeah, it takes a while to get around them, but it doesn't take 30 seconds. Numbani doesn't take, like, 30 seconds? It's weird. But, like, the idea is, like, you don't want to go straight at the Widowmaker unless she's, like, close enough to you that you can just kind of get up on her and it won't be much of an issue. Like, if you have to dash to get to her, you won't kill her, because she'll just grapple away from you, and then you're fucked, yeah. That's why you have to get to her without using the dash, and then you follow her with the dash. And, like, if you're on, like, Temple of Anubis, like, it doesn't take very long to get to her. You just, like, go through the windows on the left, and you'll be up on top of her, you know? Or you can, like, dash to get somewhere, and then by the time you, like, navigate around the rest of the way, it'll be up again. Like, if she's on, like, the right side of Anubis, you can just, like, dash over to the right side into the building, and then by the time you go up the rest of the way to get to her, the dash will be off cooldown, or basically off cooldown, and you can use it to fight her again. Like, I mean, perhaps it's kind of rich to say, but it's for me to say anyway, but it's not that difficult to do this, really. Like, and I mean, I know it sounds like a stupid question. It really is just like, you get to her without using your dash, however that you do that. Like, it'll depend on the map and where she's positioned on how you do that, but you get to her without using the dash, she grapples away, you follow her, and then you kill her. Because after that, she doesn't have her escape anymore, and she has to fight you at close range, which Widow isn't very good at, so you have the advantage. It's just about getting to her without using the dash. And I mean, if you have to go around a weird way to get to her, that's fine, but I have to wonder how weird the way you're going to get to her is if it's taking 30 seconds, because I struggle to think of a map where it would take 30 seconds for Genji to get around it. Whatever, anyway. I often hear streamers making the call no healers for the enemy team after they've been killed off. How should this affect how you attack the remaining members of the team? But your team has at least one here. And it means you go in. It just means you commit as hard as you possibly can now, because every damage you do now is permanent damage, unless they have a self-heal or they can get to a health kit, but some maps it's not feasible to get to a health kit, and not everybody's got a self-heal. If they do, they've only got one. So, it's just, you go in, you go hard now, because as long as you have a healer, you should win the fight. The enemy team just has no staying power anymore. There's no... Because sometimes when you, like... If you try to call out that you've dropped somebody really low, but there's healers alive, sometimes you'll get, like, partway through it. Like, you'll be like, X is 1, and by the time you finish saying that, they're already back to full health again. If they've got no healers, X is 1. Like, that's just how his life is now. Like, he isn't about to suddenly recover all his hit points unless he's Roadhog, you know? And even then, it's only half. So it just means commit to the team fight now, because you'll win. Unless something absolutely astonishing happens, it just means you'll win, usually. So you just commit now. I suck at hitting Ana's unscoped shots on teammates. I've found from watching Ana's play that it seems like most Ana players have a preference one way or the other. Like, some Ana players only use the rifle scoped, or predominantly use it scoped, and some predominantly use it unscoped. I've seen Anas who play unscoped constantly, but they still hit people like half the map away, because that's just how they're used to playing. It mostly I suppose it would mostly depend on, like, what kind of weapon you prefer, because Ana is the only hero in the game that changes between hit scan and projectile. Because when you're unscoped, she's projectile, and when you're scoped, she's hit scan. So it probably mostly depends on which way you personally lean. Like, I prefer to play hit scan heroes, so if I'm playing Ana, I'm usually using the rifle scoped, because it's hit scan. So it seems like Ana players have a preference one way or the other, and they try to, like, predominantly use one method over the other. How often should I be practicing to improve and maintain my aim? As long as you're playing heroes that have some kind of aim requirement, you are practicing and maintaining your aim. It just kind of happens like that. Quick tip for improving your aim. This is awfully long for a quick tip now, isn't it? Make sure you land shots. Is learning animation pauses. When Widowmaker does a hook shot, when she reaches the peak of her hook, she pauses for a second before she starts dropping. That's the easiest time to shoot her. Same when somebody jumps. When they reach the peak of their jump, they pause for a second. I guess that's true. I've never really thought of it that way, but I guess that's true. I mean, to me it's more that, like, when somebody's jumping, they're in a predictable arc because they can't really alter their momentum anymore. You can still alter your momentum a little bit, but you can't, like, you're not about to suddenly change which way you're going mid-air, unless you're like Genji or Hanzo, because you have a double jump, you know? So, it's more like they're in a predictable arc, but I guess that is also true. There's a pause before they go. This is true, yes. It's not like they well, I mean, it's true. I can see it in my mind, but, like, I don't think it's that big of a thing. A lot of animations here. I'm trying to think of Doomfist right after he does his uppercut. He pauses a bit at the top. There's a pause right at the... I mean, okay, but you gotta, like, suddenly... You gotta whip pretty hard to keep up with that one. Blink feels like she has a very sharp pause. Not really. Like, okay, we've started again. As that went on, I started getting less and less sold on it as time went by right there, so, man. Some questions about the SR system from someone who's been demoted and is stuck. I started Season 8 with 1800 SR, okay, to 1850. Started late season to keep playing hopes of climbing. But sadly, due to team comp or throwers, that happens in low SR, and also the later you get in the season, the harder it gets to climb. Like, the last week's been terrible, you know? It's just how it is. Got ranked at 1301. I can't seem to climb. I'm currently at 1273. I've had many career bests this season. My win rate is higher than ever, 58%. My main Lucio, 52. 68. 64. Bastion, 50. Okay. We're missing, like, a part of the story here. Because there's no way you have a positive win ratio, or a neutral win ratio, in this case. There's no way you have an 8% positive win ratio overall, and have been dropping, unless your stats are significantly lower than your peers at your SR. But if you've been getting career bests, that doesn't seem likely either. So this can't be the whole story, because that's flat out doesn't happen. Like, I can't think of any way this occurs other than your stats are abysmally low and the performance-based system is just like, fuck that guy. Because if you have a positive win ratio, or at worst a neutral win ratio on all the people you main, you should be climbing. Unless the people you main, you're not playing the majority of the time. Because if these stats are all true, but you've only played like 10 games between all of them, and you've played like 20 games on Mercy, right? Like, there has to be part of this story that's missing, because that doesn't happen like that. Small way to improve Hammond gameplay. Wrecking Ball player with 14 hours this season. Oh, damn. This guy's figured it out. He's a galaxy brain. When you use Pile Driver, it floats you forward in a direction and slightly up. Oh, I see. Sort of vacuum to the wall a little bit and go up. Fall off the edge, and it's like, oh, look, you're above it. Oh, but you can come back up again. I see. That's true. Unless useful, no, you can go to a corner and do a wall jump. Yeah, because he kind of, like, vacuums to stuff when he's... Because they didn't want the climbing to be super... The ball thing to be super obnoxious. He kind of, like, velcros to a surface a little bit, so I guess it would work like that. Cool. I mean, credit to this guy. He's the biggest brain of us all, apparently. Good job. I'm still working on improving. I often see a lot of people say to simply not fill and play who you're good at. Is that always, or at least mostly always, the case? Or is it, when is it a good idea to fill? How often should you fill, and why would you want to fill? Well, I only really ever, okay. If I'm playing by myself, I only fill if I absolutely have to. By which I mean, like, because I try to play Bridget as much as possible, because she's just the hero that I'm best at. I try to play her as much as possible. If the other healer is adamant that he's going to pick Zenyatta, I have to change to Moira. Or a main healer in general, but I'm going to change to Moira, because that's how I am. So, I have to do it in that case. If I got, like, 3 other people who pick supports, or even 2 other people that pick supports, I'm going to be like, alright, I guess I should change to I should change to the category we only have 1 of now. You don't always have to do that, because triple support also works, but people. So, like, I only feel if I absolutely have to, if I'm playing by myself. If I'm playing with friends, I'm more inclined to just pick whatever they don't want to play, because I can play most heroes competently, so I'm prepared to just, like, let them do whatever they want, and I'll just do whatever. But if I'm playing by myself, I only fill if I absolutely have to, which is just that, like, if I don't change to, like, fix the team comp's fucked, because team comp's important, as it turns out. So, yeah, basically, like, I'll change to fix the team comp, and that's it. Otherwise, I'll try and play who I want to play, basically. There are people who have climbed by only filling, so if, you know, you want to do that, that's your own business. But it is worth pointing out that if you are trying to be the kind of person who always fills, then you're just gonna improve slower compared to other people, because most heroes have, like, drastically divergent playstyles. Like, even heroes that are, like, adjacent to each other in roles don't play the same way. Like, Winston and D.Va are both aggressive dive tanks, but they don't play even remotely close to each other, really, other than the fact that they want to dive on people. That's where the overlap ends when how they're played. Soldier and McCree are like adjacent to each other as being mid-range hit scan heroes, but again, they both play drastically different to each other. So if you're constantly switching heroes, you're just going to improve slower because you aren't putting enough time into one hero or a category even, because, you know, the categories have overlap with each other. So, like, if you're constantly just bouncing around the roster, you'll improve slower. So, I've always been of the opinion you should be able to play 1 or 2 heroes in each category, and that's all you need. And sometimes only one. Like, if you know how to play a main healer, that's fine, because people are more inclined to pick an off healer. So if you know how to pick a main healer, that's gonna do you most of the time. So yeah, you'll improve slower, but if you want to do it, hey, go for it. It's up to you. I'm a Junkrat main in mid-golf. I'm not familiar with that one. And a popular and successful strategy in gold is Bastion ERISA, or even worse, Torb ERISA. Oh god, terrifying. Every time I get yelled at to counter them, but I don't know what to do. I can fire directly at them. I assume you mean can't, seeing as it's then and I can't flank, so it must be I can't fire directly at him because shield from Orisa and healing is too much for me. And I can't flank because I can't kill him fast enough before I die. So, you do, as Junkrat, you do just shoot directly at them, because the way Junkrat counters that kind of situation is you break their shield. That's what Junkrat does. Junkrat's really good at breaking barriers. So, if it's specifically just Orisa also, like, Junkrat by himself is capable of breaking an Orisa shield. You know, if you've got other people breaking you, it's easy. But just Junkrat by himself can break Orisa's shield just fine, really, because their shield isn't that healthy. You know, there's not really anything fancy to it, it's just that Junkrat's really good at breaking barriers, so you do just break the barriers, and then, you know, this is the thing with Bastion in general, or Torb, Orisa, whatever, you know, the turret shield composition is they are using the most nefarious of all tactics in the game. They're using teamwork. And the only way you can really counter teamwork is with teamwork, because if it's just you, one person, versus like 2 or 3 people, because if it's Bastion, then it's going to be like Bastion, Orisa, and probably also a Mercy, or a main healer as well, right? So, if it's just you, one person, versus 3 people, you lose. So, if they are employing teamwork, all you can really do is also employ teamwork, because teamwork is what beats teamwork. There's only so much you as one person can do, but the idea for Junkrat is break the barrier, and then while the barrier is broken, Torbjorn/Bastion is exposed, and therefore easier for your team to kill. Now, I don't encourage doing this frequently, but this is a strategy that Junkrat has. When you die, you drop a lot of bombs. So, worst comes to worst, you can always get right up on that Bastion and try to kill him. And if you don't kill him, he kills you. You did drop like 9 bombs on him, so he probably died. Is that a very consistent strategy? No. But hey, if you got nothing better, it could work. Thank you for everyone for improving my calls out. Now I need help with positioning. Oh no. Let's see. I made Mercy, Moira, Bridge, Diva, and Pharah. All of these heroes positioned differently, so that's convenient. And I'm only in low plat. I'm still working on setting up an environment to record VODs. I'm too aggressive and I try to follow up as Mercy. On a teammate that rushes in and gets killed, depending on the enemy team's awareness, I either get focused or don't. If a motherfucker has made a mistake, don't be afraid to let him die. This isn't just blanketly good advice. If someone has made a mistake, don't try and just like write that boy off as being dead, right? Don't be afraid to write a teammate off as just he's dead. Especially if you're playing someone like Mercy or a tank or a support in general. Like if a dude fucked up and he's dead, he's dead. What am I going to do about that, right? I can't yank him back to safety. If he dived into 6 people by himself, fucker deserves to die. I ain't going to go in there and die with him. If I write him off as being dead, that's one person who's dead. If I go in there and try to save him and I die, that's 2 people dead. And I'm the main healer. Fuck that guy. So don't be afraid to write people off as being dead. Especially if they do something too aggressive and stupid. It's their fault. If it keeps happening, like if a Reinhardt, for example, just like keeps charging in over and over and over again, the best you could do as like a healer is change to Ana, because you can heal him from far away and like bio grenade and nano boost to try and keep him alive if he's like continuously keeps making this mistake. But like, don't be afraid to write people off as dead. I died to flankers as Mercy a lot. I tried to look around, but I feel like I'm getting hit by high noon flanks, for example, more often than I should be. I mean, that's just awareness. Like, if you can't... Okay, so just try and keep in mind roughly where all of the enemy team are. And if you don't know where someone is, assume they're trying to flank you. Like, if you can't see someone over there, assume they're trying to flank you. I saw a Genji previously over there, and now I don't see a Genji. Until Genji is accounted for, I'm going to assume he's trying to flank me. I saw a McCree over there. I don't see McCree anymore. That's very suspicious, seeing as he's meant to be a consistent DPS hero. So until I see McCree again, I'm going to assume he's flanking me, right? So just try and keep in mind roughly where all of the enemy team are. And if you haven't seen someone for a while, or you don't know where they are, just assume they're flanking you until you know otherwise. And sometimes that's going to lead to you playing too cautiously, because it turns out he was over there, he was just hiding behind that pillar and I couldn't see him. But if I'm playing like Mercy, me playing more conservatively is what I was meant to be doing anyway, probably, so you know. And if you're someone like Moira or Bridget, fuck, I'll just fight the dude when he pops out on me, right? So who cares? But like, if you don't know where somebody is, just assume they're flanking you until you know otherwise. And, you know, just like look around more. But if you haven't seen someone for a while, particularly if it's a hero like McCree, because McCree is meant to be a consistent damage hero, who's just meant to be sitting with his team doing damage. If you don't see him over there with his team shooting at you, he's up to no good. He's either dead or up to no good, so you should just be suspicious at that point. I make poor high-risk, high-reward moves that often lead to me feeding. For example, trying to... Yeah, don't do that. It seems empty, then people just wait for me around corners, or my awareness isn't as good as I thought it was. Similarly, I feel like I frontline as Bridge and get tunnel vision to taking me out of position. I mean, so... sometimes the high-risk, high-reward is worth it, but it depends on, like, how much you think you can get away with at the time. Like, one of my favorite things to do, as Bridget in particular, seeing as this is mentioned, is I like to do some minor flanking. So here's what I don't mean like hardcore flanking. Here's what I mean, right? So imagine we're on Volskaya, right? Here's the box on Volskaya's first point, right? So if I'm on the attacking team and we're pushing in, right? Suppose the enemy team is mostly over here. My team is going to start pushing up on their team over here. And then the defending team are going to start moving backwards, because that's what you do. We start moving in, they're going to start moving backwards. So if I know my team is going to go this way, I know they're going to retreat this way, and they're going to go towards the opposite end of the point, because they're going up this way. So the supports and their backliners are going to try and get to like the opposite side of the point to where my team is coming from. So what I'll do is Bridget is I'll go this way. And then, if the enemy team are playing as I would anticipate them to do, which is that their long-range heroes are going to go to the opposite side of the point to my team, I'll just pop out behind their backline and go, and just cut off that route of escape for them, and then force them to back up into me, whereupon I'll start pressuring them, and, like, it's hard for them to kill me. Most backline heroes aren't really equipped to kill Bridget close up. So either I'll kill them or pressure them, and then my team, like, I got, like, a couple of people dealing with me, which means my team, at that point, is fighting, like, 5v4. Great. And I'm probably occupying, like, one or both of their healers, right? So that's like a high-risk, high-reward play, because suppose, like, somebody sees me doing that through the window, I could come around this corner and come, like, face-to-face with their Roadhog who hooks me and kills me, right? Or they might not retreat that way, they might go further back towards, like, the river behind the point, in which case I'm not advancing in on anybody, I'm just actually coming in by myself instead, and they can just look over and start shooting at me, seeing as I am isolated. It's like high-risk, high-reward, but if I can, like, it's high risk, but it's high reward, because they might not act how I think they're going to act, and then they'll just kill me because I'm by myself. But if they act like I think they will, if I make the correct read on them, I'll cut off their path of retreat and fuck up their backline. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't work. Now, as Mercy, though, right, because, like, this is from the perspective of, like, a Bridget player, where you've got a pretty wide margin of error for fucking up as Bridget, right? Mercy, however, you're, like, a really important hero for your team, especially since, like, you're probably the main healer on your team. Like, if the other healer's, like, a Zenyatta, and you go make the high-risk, high-reward play, and then it fucks up, shit, now your team's only got a Zenyatta, so you're gonna lose the fight, which can be catastrophic if you're the defending team. So, as Mercy, I would just generally advise avoiding high-risk, high-reward plays unless you think you need to make the play or you're gonna lose, basically. Because Mercy, the risk for Mercy making a bad mistake is actually so very catastrophic, right? Like, if Mercy goes for the high risk and it doesn't pay off, you're missing your main healer. So that's like a death sentence in a lot of situations, so I don't advise going for that one usually. It's like if you're playing Reinhardt, also, I don't advise going for the high-risk, high-reward plays that often, because if you fuck up, your team is missing their main tank, which means, like, hey, I might have charged through 6 people and killed their Mercy, but more likely I'll just die, and then my team doesn't have the main tank, and they're fucked. So there are certain heroes where going for the high-risk, high-reward play, the risk is potentially game-losing, right? Whereas the risk for someone like Bridget, it's like, the risk isn't really that high because it's hard to kill Bridget, and even if you die as Bridget, you're probably the off-healer, which is less terrible to lose than your main healer. So there's still a risk associated with it, but the risk is lower compared to if, like, a Mercy goes for it, you know? So there are some heroes I just don't think going for the high-risk, high-reward plays is that beneficial, unless the reward is, like, I win the game, or, like, I'm gonna lose the game if I don't try for the really big play. Anyway, so, best off tank to climb with. Easy. Zarya. Especially if low SR, if you're good at Zarya, you'll be full charge constantly, and then you can just walk through the enemy team, because high charge Zarya is the best hero, or high energy, I should say. High energy Zarya is the best hero in the game, and you'll just plow through the enemy team because you do the most damage in the game at that point, and your ultimate will carry, assuming you ult correctly, your ult will carry even the most uncoordinated of teams to success. So it's easily Zarya is the best off tank to climb with. Beyond that, it's probably D.Va. I would have said Roadhog previously, but he got nerfed like 20,000 times, and like all the heroes that are currently popular kind of shit on Roadhog, so it's like Zarya, D.Va, Roadhog. But Zarya is, like, the best by a mile. Question that has been... Fuck off. Fucking fly. A question that's been plaguing me since I started competitive, and the reason why I switch my primary roles so often. Should I keep playing my heroes I'm good with, or should I play to fill? Play what you're good with and you'll climb, but what about needing to fill? And what if your role is already taken, but they're doing badly on it? So we did talk about this earlier. We didn't really talk about what if your role is taken, but they're doing badly on it. So that's like one of the few times I will change, even if it makes the team comp worse on paper. Because if I look at, like, the main tank, if I'm playing, like, Bridget, fuck off, or a DPS, right, and I see that, like, the Reinhardt is terrible, I'm gonna go, we aren't gonna get anywhere with this guy, so I'm gonna change to a tank. And I'm gonna basically change to, like, a main tank, which means I'm gonna change to a Winston at that point, probably. Because, I'm like, we're not gonna get through the door with this guy. So I gotta try and do something or we ain't getting anywhere. Similarly, if I'm playing like a tank or a DPS and like, fucking, I've got like gold healing as Roadhog, right? I'm gonna be like, fuck, I'm changing to Moira, you know? That's that's a very hyperbolic example, but like, if the role is important enough, if the main healer or the main tank is bad enough, I will change to another healer or another tank, even if that makes the team comp worse on paper. Because I look at it and I go, it doesn't matter if that makes the team comp worse on paper, because the team comp is currently not functioning as it's supposed to anyway. Because our team comp right now is only good, assuming everybody plays correctly. So if that healer over there is awful, like if that Mercy has literally died like 20 times in the last 3 minutes, again, you know, I think that's literally impossible time-wise, but like either way, if that Mercy is dying constantly, I'm going to change to a main healer. Because if the main healer is always dead, or the main healer is bad, we don't have a main healer right now anyway. So I might as well change to a main healer and like plug the hole in the sinking ship as best I can. DPS, we kind of talked about that earlier, but I find it is very rarely DPS that's the issue. I find if you're playing a tank or a healer and you're blaming the DPS, there's probably actually a different reason that you're losing. It's very rarely the DPS that's the problem, I find. It's almost always a tank or a healer is actually the issue. And I do mean, like, almost always. Like, I would say it's probably the DPS's fault, like, 10-15% of the time. Like, it's almost always the tank, actually, and then it's the support after that. I find it's almost never the DPS, actually. It's just, you know, we talked about that. Often finding myself the last one alive on my team. I mostly play, well, you're already playing heroes that are hard to kill, so, like, that's not too shocking in and of itself. On or near the point with no teammates left around me. How can I avoid this? Is it just a matter of awareness? To follow up, at what point should I back off entirely and wait for my team to respawn? Or should I try to stall the objective instead? Rule of thumb I almost always give is if you're down 2 people relative to the enemy team, just give it up. Like, if you're like 4 versus 6, 3 versus 5, you've probably lost. So you should just back out at that point. Like, often just 1 is enough, but like depending on like what you're at SR-wise, like getting all 6 people together is nigh impossible. So if you're down 2 people relative to the enemy team, that's when I say you should usually start writing off the fight and trying to back out. If you're gonna lose, obviously, like, stay there. Sometimes on King of the Hill, it's worth staying because you're still gaining points while the objective's being contested. So if you're playing like a hero that has like a lot of longevity to them, like, you know, like Lucio, Mei, something like that, if you can stall out the objective and get an extra like 20-30% on it, that's probably worth being a bit staggered for, because you've made like significant progress towards winning the game by just being alive for that period of time. That's not always true either. Like, if they're really close to winning and you get like 30% on it, but like they're at 99 and then you die staggered so the enemy team just wins while you're dead, that's not worth it. But it is sometimes worth it to contest on a King of the Hill game, even though you know you'll die, if you can make significant progress towards winning the objective. Or winning the round, I should say. So, with the finding myself the only one alive thing, so what I find often is the problem is that, particularly in low SR, almost always in low SR, I don't know where this person's at, obviously, but a common problem is that, like, your team is doing something stupid, but you decide you're going to do what you should be doing in spite of that. So, like, Suppose we're on Dorado, right? And I see my whole team is standing in the doorway in the street at the first corner to their spawn, right? At the attacking team. You know you don't want to be down there. You know you want to be up on the high ground behind, next to the bridge, and then when they start pushing under the bridge, you rotate round back, and then you start defending from the bridge, because it's the choke point. That's what you do on that map. If your team is standing up in the street, like in front of the first corner on the map, you have to go stand with them, right? Like, some heroes you can kind of make do. Like, if you're playing like Soldier or like a long-range hero, you can stand on the high ground behind the first corner in the street, and then you're like basically where you should be. But not quite, but like basically where you should be. But you have to go stand with them, because if your team is doing something stupid, you have to go and do the stupid thing with them. Because if you don't go do the stupid thing with them, they're doing the stupid thing 5v6, right? So the stupid thing was already unlikely to work, but now they're doing the stupid thing at a numbers disadvantage. So the stupid thing will definitely fail. And it doesn't matter where you're standing. Like, you're standing back there in the correct position, that's great for you. Your 5 teammates just died over there. So you're standing in the correct position, sure. Now kill those 6 people by yourself. It's not going to work. Go do the stupid thing with them. That quite often happens with, like, people finding they're the last one alive. Is that, like, they just weren't with their team. Like, they didn't think they should be up where their team was, but, like, because they weren't where their team was, like, their team died without them, and then just like, oh fuck, they all rolled onto me. Weird. Like, you have to go do the stupid thing with them. Obviously, I don't know where that person's at, so, like... But, like, I find that's usually the issue with that kind of thing, is that, like, you have to go do the stupid thing with them. Doesn't matter if, like, you should be where you're standing right now. If they all die, great, you're in the correct position, you're alone. How to get out of bronze on console, I honestly couldn't tell you, because I don't play on console. But I would assume it's probably the same way as on PC, which is just, like... Well, like... If you want to get out of bronze, like, really just being able to use your ult well is probably good enough, because, like, it's like, punish people's mistakes. That's, like, basically the whole game is that, like, punish people's mistakes. People make a lot of mistakes in bronze, so, like, whatever hero you play, ideally you play a hero that can punish mistakes. Doesn't say. Like, if you're playing, like, Mercy, don't play Mercy. Play, like, Moira, you know, or something like that instead, right? Punish people's mistakes. People make a fuck ton of mistakes in bronze. Punish those mistakes, and then you'll climb. Because that's what the whole game is about, basically. Punishing people's mistakes. As is most competitive video games. It's about punishing people's mistakes, you know? They're all like that. Strategy games are the same way. Fighting games are the same way. You punish people's mistakes. That's how you win. If the other person plays perfectly, obviously you're not going to win. You punish their mistakes. Keeping comms clean. I used to be a Mercy main. How this hellish solo queue was before. But I transitioned to Zen when I found a friend I could manage. You shouldn't play Mercy. I'm playing Moira, you know, or Anna. She's pretty good right now. I'm high rank. I'm having a stroke. I'm ranked high gold at the moment, on my way to plat. Main tanks in my elo typically don't shock call, making me the main one. This works for me and it keeps cluttering down. But I can see comms getting cluttered in higher elos potentially. Okay, like, I'm in Masters, so you'd think I'd know. I don't join the team chat because I find it to be a waste of time, almost always. But, like, here's the thing. Communication is a skill in and of itself. This is also the thing with lower SRs, is that, like, communication is a skill. Not many people actually have this skill. As you get higher, I would expect people to be more consistently good at communicating, which means that, if anything, comms should actually get less cluttered as you climb, because people should be communicating less redundant information, or less useless information, basically. So, like, if anything, I would expect the clutter to actually go down as you get higher, rather than lower. Especially as people, as you get higher, would recognize the importance of keeping communication clean, but that's kind of besides the point. To get to the change, I'm looking for tips on how to keep comms more clean and less cluttered on my end, especially if there are more people willing to contribute to comms. Unlikely to be the case, but, you know, it's pretty rare that you'll find more than, like, 2 people in a game where they, like, really want to be involved in communication actively. Right now, I feel like I'm maybe giving too much individual information, individual enemy positioning, and what I should be communicating and what to cut out. So, just assuming you're playing, like, solo or, like, duo or something like that, you're never gonna get, like, I mean, you will sometimes. You're very rarely going to get, like, really big organized plays together, so it really is going to be more about, like, calling out targets and, like, who has their ultimates, who's out of position, things like that. So, like, the most important thing to call out is, like, who to is, like, when to go in, when to back out, in roughly this order. When to go in, when to back out, who to focus, who has a threatening ultimate on their team. Like, if you know the enemy Reinhardt's got his Earth Shatter, that's important for people to know. If you know the enemy Zarya's got Graviton, that's important for people to know. If the enemy Roadhog has got Whole Hog, that's not really important for people to know. People don't need to know that one, really. Like, if they've got a threatening ultimate, you should call out that they probably have that right now, or that they do have it if you know with certainty that they have it. Like, you've watched their kill cam or something like that. Yeah, so, like, when to go in, when to back out, who to focus, who has scary ultimates, who needs help on your team, that kind of thing. And that's really all you need to clear out, or call out, or, like, if somebody's out of position as well, that's pretty high up there. That's kind of all you really need to communicate. Like, you're never going to get more than that in a pug, really. Like, you'll occasionally get, like, really organized plays together in pugs, but, like, probably not. Like, that's the kind of thing that happens in, like, 5-stack, 6-stack situations, right? So it's not so much shot calling as it is more like calling out information, really, if you're a pugs. But like the biggest thing is trying to keep things quick and concise. Like, also, if you want to like shot call, you also need to speak kind of authoritatively, right? Because if you're somebody who's going like, I think we should go in on the left-hand side, no one's going to listen to you, right? You go, left, now! And people are more likely to listen to you at that point. Like, you want to keep things concise, right? Like, the enemy Zenyatta has got his ultimate, is very cluttered. You can just go, Zen has ult. And then you've cut you've cut it in like half, right? Hog's out of position, right? Things like that. You want to try and just keep it as short to the point as possible and try to speak authoritatively and clearly. Because nobody's going to listen to the nerd in the corner going like, kill fucking Mercy. They'll listen to you then, you know? That kind of thing. But I would actually expect that to be not much of an issue as you would climb up, really. I wouldn't expect clutter to be an issue. I'm a hog main with 190 hours, and I just can't improve. I don't know how to play with a team, and even though I ask for advice, everyone just says he's brain dead and there's no hope for me. Don't be that kind of cunt. If someone asks you for advice, you're just gonna turn around and go, sounds like you're just hopeless. That hero takes no skill. What a tremendous cunt you are. You deserve to be launched into the sun. Wow. This is also, funny how people are, because I find that almost every hero is brain dead except for the hero that they play. Because I play Bridget, and as you might infer, being good at Bridget, I get accused of playing a brain-dead hero and that I should try playing a hero that takes actual skill to play. And I'm not going to tell you that Bridget's the hardest hero in the game to play, because that's not true. But I find it odd that people say Bridget's a brain-dead hero that you just auto-climb on, when I only ever see another person playing Bridget like 1 out of every 5 games. And when I see them, they're almost always bad. People say that Winston is a brain-dead hero, but I've seen an awful lot of Winston's throw games. People say Mercy's a brain-dead hero, but I've seen an awful lot of Mercy's throw games as well, right? Like, it's funny how the heroes, all the heroes are brain-dead except for the ones that they play. And the thing is, as well, is that if a hero doesn't have a very high mechanical requirement, they're almost always relegated to being a brain-dead hero. Mercy actually becomes like one of the hardest heroes to play as you climb up. Like, Mercy has this interesting arc where she starts off difficult to play because your teammates are bad. And then she gets easier to play because your teammates become competent, but the enemy team is still incompetent enough that they don't focus you. Eventually you reach a point where your team is competent and you can rely on them, but you can also rely on the enemy team to competently dive you. So Mercy has this interesting arc where she starts off hard, then gets easier, And then gets very hard again, right at the end. Like, very interesting. Winston also, like, gets harder to play as you climb. I mean, everybody gets harder to play as you climb, but, like, the heroes that are Braindead Heroes actually become harder and harder to play as you climb, because, like, Winston, they'll react to you more appropriately. More people will actually turn and focus you when you dive in, things like that. But, so I always find that very funny. It's, if your hero doesn't take mechanical skill, obviously it's a Braindead hero. There's no skill in the game other than aim. That's it. No other skills exist. Is that so, Genji? Why are you dead right now, Genji? Guess you just weren't good enough, were you? If you jumped into all 6 of those people and you were good enough, you would have lived, wouldn't you? You would have just killed all of them instantly. Anyway. So, anyway. Enough of people being stupid. Like, don't be that kind of cunt, though. Okay? Like, if I have friends said that to you, excommunicate that person. They're a cunt. Anyway, so we're playing Hog in a team. So the thing is that Roadhog is a tank. He just doesn't really operate as a tank like any other tank in the game, because you don't really think about Roadhog as being a tank, and we make the joke about it that he's actually a DPS with a lot of hit points, right? Which is true in a way, but here's what Roadhog's really good at. Roadhog's actually really good at zoning, because Roadhog's zone of threat is very scary, right? So, always imagine someone's zone of threat. Like, this is how I envision zoning. I imagine a circle around your hero that is your effective range, right? So for Roadhog, his circle is 21 meters, because that's the range of his hook. So, you got this giant 21-meter circle around you. And the enemy team, they don't want to be inside that circle, because that circle is very scary to be in, because there's the risk that they might just suddenly die, right? Because if you hook them, all goes according to plan, you kill the person, right? Like, that's just how it should be. You don't always kill them, but, like, theoretically, they have a very high chance of dying when you hook them, right? So, they don't want to be in that circle. So, playing Roadhog, a lot of, like, you know, obviously you're trying to get picks and kill people, but you're also trying to zone them. You're trying to move your circle in such a way that is most obstructive to the enemy team, because they don't want to be in it, right? If they're going to be in your circle, they want to be near cover or behind a barrier or something like that, right? They don't want to just walk around out in the open in front of you. So you got to try and move so that you're obstructing as much of the enemy team's positioning as possible. And you also want to be, like, deliberate with your hook as a result, because Roadhog's zone of threat changes, right? Because once you use your hook, your zone of threat is no longer 21 meters. It's now basically point blank. It's a little weirder than that, because his right click obviously isn't point blank, so he actually has this weird, like, double circle arrangement. But for simplicity's sake, once you've used your hook, your zone of threat becomes basically right next to you. So, if the enemy team, like, suppose there's a Tracer trying to dive your backline, right? If you're just, like, standing next to the Mercy, the Tracer has to respect the fact you have your hook, and that you can just hook her and kill her, right? So she has to play around you as a result of that. Whereas if you try to hook her and you miss, Tracer goes, oh, Roadhog's not scary anymore, and then she just ignores you and tries to kill the Mercy, right? So, if you're not confident you're going to hook the Tracer, the Genji, whoever, if you're not confident you're going to hook them, you should just hold on to it, because the threat of the hook can be scarier than the hook itself, because Tracer's actually hard to hook, right? You need to take some time to actually, like, do the calculations in your head to hook her. So if you just throw it out like, I'm going to get her, and then you miss, not scary, just kills Mercy now. So sometimes the threat of the hook is scarier than the hook itself, because she has to play around the hook as long as she knows you have it, right? Whereas when she sees it, doesn't have to anymore. And then the other thing is, you can use your ultimate to, like, stall out fights, right? Because Whole Hog is not super good as an offensive ultimate unless you can combo it with another ultimate, or you can push people off an edge, pin them into a corner, that kind of thing. What Whole Hog is really good at is stopping a team fight, because it's very hard to engage into Whole Hog, right? Like, you have to be able to stop Whole Hog, basically, because the whole team is just getting pushed back in this giant cone in front of Roadhog, right? And it breaks barriers and all this, so it's it's hard to use it offensively. It requires specific situations. But if the enemy team is trying to engage a fight and you're not 100% on this fight, like you're not confident you're going to win this fight for one reason or another, you can just decide to write that whole team fight off, right? You can just go, I don't want to have this team fight. Y'all can fuck off, actually. Like, your whole team is recovering right now. Everybody's, like, low health and they're trying to engage a fight. Fuck off. They try to come in using, like, sound barrier. I'd rather you didn't. I'd rather you came in without that shield, actually. I'm going to push you all away for a while instead. You're down, like, a person or two. I'm going to push you away for a while and give my team time to regroup behind me. That kind of thing. But, like, the biggest thing with, like, team play as Roadhog is mostly about, like, zoning, because you're a very scary hero. And then you're obviously still trying to pick people and get kills, obviously. Like, that's part of Roadhog. Yeah, you're trying to pick people and kill people. But he's, like, one of the scariest zoning heroes in the game, just because the threat of the hook is so scary. Because once you get hooked, like, you're probably gonna die. Like, he has one of the most threatening zones of threat. What an excellent way to phrase that sentence. Like, it's similar to Mei, right? Like, being next to Mei is extremely scary. Because Mei doesn't have to try very hard to kill you. Because as soon as you're frozen, that's it. Life's over for you at that point. So, like, Mei's zone of threat is, like, very fucking scary. If we want to take it, like, a step further, everybody's circle is, like, a slightly different color, right? Because if we were to think about, like, Roadhog and Mei, their circle is, like, bright fucking red. Danger zone, right? Whereas if we think about, like, Soldier, then his is, like, basically, like, yellow-green, like, right on top of him, and then it gets closer to red once you get to, like, 15-20 meters, and then it starts going more towards yellow the further out you go, because it's, like, he's effective in, like, his whole fall-off range, but he doesn't like people being right on top of him, and he doesn't like people being extremely far away from him, because he's not a sniper. So, like, if you want to go a step further, everybody's zone of threat is a different kind. Like, Lucio, his zone of threat is, like, it's green, basically. Like, Lucio isn't a particularly scary hero, right? So, like, but, like, Mei and Roadhog, red fucking circle, because they're extremely scary. Like, the Earth Shatter Cone out of Reinhardt is, like, fucking bright red scary, whereas, like, his, around him is probably more, like, orange, right? That kind of thing. So, you can, but that's, like, Roadhog. Zone people. Be scary and zone people. Best heroes to learn. Just, 2 weeks ago, and I hit level placements, but I only feel confident playing Hanzo. Hey, he's the best hero in the game right now. So my question is now, who would be the most optimal heroes for me to put hours into so I have a diverse hero pool moving forward? I mean, Hanzo, you got by basically all your bases covered DPS-wise with just him. The other, like, most well-rounded DPS heroes you could play are, like, Soldier and Pharah, just, like, consistently really good heroes. Or the flankers, but, you know, they're hard to play, but they're heroes that are basically never bad, like Tracer's never bad, Genji's never bad, that kind of thing. They can be bad, but they're very rarely bad. And then, you know, just try and play a hero in each pool, a hero or two in each category. Like, try and be able to play a main healer, try to be able to play a main tank. That's probably good enough. Like, it's most often you'll need to fill a main tank or a main healer. But if you want to go a step further, also know how to play an off healer and an off tank. And that's all you really need to do. Like, you don't need to know that many heroes. Just focus on the heroes that you really like to play, is the also more simple answer. Now that profiles are private by default, is Overbuff less effective at tracking your stats compared to your peers? I mean, yes, on a strictly objective level, because now it has a smaller pool to pull from. Overbuff was always not strictly representative of your place, because, as my understanding of it was, it doesn't scrape the whole fucking database of Overwatch players. It only had stats from the people who had looked up their profiles previously, which caused the stats to trend higher than they should have been, because the people who are most likely to check their stats are people of, like, decent to higher range, right? Like, you don't get nearly as many, like, bronze and silver players checking their stats compared to, like, plat, diamond, masters, GM. Like, those are the people much more likely to check their stats, so as a result, that always trended higher than it should have been. Like, I think according to Overbuff, the average SLR was platinum. I find that extremely unlikely to be true. Like, it could be, But I mostly think about this compared to, like, other games, where, like, the average, it tends to be, like, silver, right? Like, if you look at League of Legends, I think the average placement in that is, like, silver 2 or something like that. Granted, League of Legends has a lot more ways for you to be bad at the game compared to Overwatch, so that could result in it trending lower compared to Overwatch, but I find it unlikely the average SR for the entire player base is platinum. I'd be surprised. So anyway, regardless, now, yes, it's like, there's a smaller pool of people to pull from just in general, but it was never completely representative to begin with. Whatever. I never used, Overbuff to begin with. Let me show you the page that I use, right? Let's go over here. It's this page. It is Overwatch, and I will show you why I like it. Because the thing is with Overbuff is you have to do an amount of extrapolation on your own, because you have to kind of look at the stats and read into it. The thing with Overwatch is it looks at the heroes you play. So as you can see, I've only played like enough free heroes to get stats for. But then it like does the work for you, right? Like it tells you, and okay, so like it tells me I'm like a GM on Bridget, so you know, whatever. But if we go over here, right? It tells you what you're good at, and then it also tells you what you're bad at. So it like does the work for you. Because you have to be able, like, if you're going to use Overbuff, you have to be able to look at your own stats and kind of read into it. You have to be like, why is my healing so much lower than the other ones? And then you look at your other stats, like, you look at, like, your offensive assists compared to, like, your defensive assists and your deaths and objective. Like, you have to do an amount of extrapolation on your own. Whereas this just looks at your stats and goes, all right, your healing priority? Great, awesome. You've got that figured out. Your target priority? That's weaker. You should be working more on that area instead. So it like does the work for you. So I recommend using Overwatch because you just have to do less work. And I'm a big fan of having to do less work, frankly. So, PSA, stop switching. And amazingly, it's taken us almost an hour to get through the first page, so we're going to call it good after this. Don't know why it's almost every game lately, even if DPS is doing a good job, but there's always the healer tank that thinks it's a good idea to randomly switch to DPS mid-match, and then proceed to not even tell team. Yeah. It's, as we've established multiple times during this video, it's very rarely the DPS's fault anyway. Chances are, that was the Reinhardt that switched, and he was trying to play like he was a DPS when he's actually meant to be playing like he's a tank. Such is life. So, thank you very much for watching if you did. If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to answer. If you haven't already, you can join our Discord and ask questions more directly and have a conversation about them, or just shitpost with us, and I hope you found the video helpful.